I still have the idea and the dream of changing the world for the better, or making a difference somehow. And I guess I don't know, starting to get to this point where it seems pointless. It really does. I don't know. It's not like anybody really cares what I have to say, but I'm gonna just start talking. Um, it's mainly like there's some reasons why I wanted to just do this. It's mainly just try and focus my thoughts. Really, I'm so scatterbrained, and I tend to, I have logical thoughts that are contradicted by a second logical thought, and I'm never able to actually figure out what I really believe. So maybe that's part of the purpose of this. And I just want to complain. I just want to complain. And I want to see what I like I said, what I actually think. I'm just going to start talking out loud, thinking out loud, and hopefully coming to some realizations. I don't know. I really don't know what I'm trying to do. I So the first thing that was kind of on my mind, as it always is so what triggered it this time? What's on my mind is that I just cannot believe how normal and how common it is for other people to think it is, for other people to make decisions for other people that have nothing to do with them. That's sort of scatterbrained again. Obviously my thoughts and my words don't always line up, but why am I saying so? This can be attributed to anything. Obviously there's gray area for everything, but I think there's certain circumstances where there is not gray area, and an example of that would be so let's say laws on marijuana. Just for a start, that's always the easiest example because it leaves less gray area, at least in my mind. Drugs in general, really, drugs, anything that an individual is able to consume and alter, their state of mind or their consciousness or whatever. So, talking about drugs in general, it's interesting the amount of people that believe that drugs should be legal or illegal. And it's weird to me. And I'm not saying that in the sense that just what they think. I'm saying that in the sense that what people actually work towards. So the people I'm talking about, the people in question in general, are people who they believe that. So let's start with illegal. If you think drugs should be illegal, oftentimes these people believe that should be made into law, that it should be illegal to have drugs, and that it is the government or the governing body's responsibility to take action if somebody's doing drugs. And then there's the other side of the line where people think that drugs should be totally legal, and I'm not really sure where I'm going with this. It's more so I'm trying to focus my thoughts again. I always have so many thoughts. It's hard to line them up and actually say what I'm thinking, because that was wrong. That wasn't what I was thinking. What I was just talking about. It's weird. I'll have to apologize. I get nervous anytime I'm actually just talking about opinions or thoughts, because I don't know. I feel a little crazy lately. I feel so crazy. Again, it's hard to organize my own thoughts. It's hard to see how the world could end up in as much turmoil as it does if there's just normal, rational people who just think for themselves. It's so interesting how it's even possible. And again, I feel like the insane one because of all that. Because I don't know if I'm a bit of an anarchist in a sense, so I guess that makes you insane to an extent, but like I'm a moral anarchist. I think everybody should be able to do whatever they want, and it should be nobody else's choices to do those things. People should just do the right things, simply put. And for those who don't do the right thing and it starts affecting other people, that is when you take action. So maybe that's sort of where this thought was going originally, that whether you believe drugs are good or bad, that's entirely beside the point. That's a matter of perspective, right? You can use them in a very good way or you can use them in a very bad way. It doesn't the substance itself is not the problem, it's the people. So I guess where I'm going with this argument, I just sort of see, this is where my mind goes. So like now that I'm using drugs as an example, I understand that people already have an opinion about me because I'm using drugs as the example. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say, I guess, eventually I'll get to a point here, is that if somebody wants to do drugs, whether anybody else thinks it's good or bad, so long as that person is doing that activity and there's no contact with anybody else, no interactions with anybody else, nothing affecting anybody else. And this argument's been used thousands of times, obviously, especially for drugs. Then what the heck is the problem with somebody just doing that? And why, even if you feel that drugs are bad and they're bad for you and they lead to bad decisions, blah, 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 why do those people think that it should be made illegal? So I guess what I don't see why anybody else, despite how bad you think a thing is, because there's things that I think are absolutely terrible. Let's say, oh man. So what's it called when people, I don't even want, I'm about to get too explicit if I say that. But the point I'm trying to make is here that there's lots of things that I don't agree with on a moral standpoint. I don't know if that's conditioned from the world around me or if it's some inherent beliefs that I have. But the fact is that there's one thing in our country that I believe, if anything, can be the uniting factor. And a million people have said this, and it's just hard to believe that there's not more people on board for this thought process. But I believe that... Hold on, I gotta collect my thoughts again here. I get so scatterbrained. Like the one uniting... Okay, so the one thing that should unite everybody in America is the fact that we're all different, right? And the fact that we accept that we're all different. Now, I know that's crazy because obviously there's groups of people who don't like other types of people. So like when you have a country like America, obviously you have, I'm just going to say, maybe not, but let's just say for the sake of the argument, one of every race, every religion, every background, every, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. We have so diverse a population that it's impossible for every single person to agree on every single argument. It's just not going to happen. And I believe the solution to that is the one thing that everybody can agree on is that in my mind, this is what we should all agree on. And again, I would like feedback on this wholeheartedly. Please tell me if you have different answers. We should all agree that we should just allow to be individuals, and there shouldn't be laws or regulations or anything that's going to affect anybody else unless you do something that affects somebody else. Does that sort of make sense? So for example, let's go back to the drugs argument. It's the easiest one. Obviously I'm going to get stereotyped for this, but that's just the way it goes. Let's say I want to smoke weed. Let's say I want to, and it's so weird because this is not how I used to think, but I've become this sort of responsible anarchist, and I think that other people can be responsible anarchists as well. So, like, let's say I want to smoke. Let's say I want to smoke in the comfort of my house. Obviously, nobody else is around me. I won't see anybody else all day, and it will wear off before the next day, let's say. Should that be illegal? Whether you think it's bad or good, I don't think so. I think it has not. The reason for that argument is, again, it has nothing to do with anybody else. Now, you get into some more gray areas where you have things like, should I be able to drive and smoke? Now, obviously, you're under the influence. There's lots of statistical evidence that while being under the influence of mind-altering drugs, you know, there's more likelihood of bad things happening. And that's not wrong. You know, morally, it makes sense to want to prevent more bad things from happening. But then I'm going to, so this is where I don't believe you can have laws in place because, or you can't have laws in place for that sort of thing. Because let's say you have somebody else who's driving who is just, they're extremely tired. They've been driving for a while, or even if they haven't been driving for a while, maybe the person is just tired in general. There's also research that explains how, you know, sleep deprivation or, you know, being tired can impair your driving, and it can do it as much, if not more so, than certain drugs or certain amounts of drugs, let's say. And in both cases, let's say the person is just, I don't know, driving home from somewhere, and they don't hurt anybody. They get home safely. Should we take action on one or the other of those people, the person who is tired or the person who was smoking? Let's say they smoked weed or something, I don't know. But should we take action on both those people equally? Because let's say they took the same amount of marijuana that led to the same amount of distracted or impaired driving that the other person's tiredness has. You know, everybody loves their statistics, and obviously that's not a thing that you can measure on the spot, but they're just as bad as one another oftentimes, right? People who are driving tired are just as dangerous, or, you know, their driving is just as impaired as somebody who is under the influence. So collecting things, do I think that we can have a society where, you know, certain, let's, again, always using the example of drugs, where those things are legal, and so long as people aren't hurting anybody else and there's no adverse event that happens, are we able to, oh, code, how dare you? How dare I what? I'm just ranting today, bro. I just saw that chat, sorry, I gotta pull it off my phone. The chat thing doesn't always work. But I don't know. It's just a weird thought I always have in my head, and it's a bit of an anarchist thought where, you know, everybody should be able to do anything at any point in time without any sort of government body interfering with them or detaining them or finding them or whatever until it affects somebody else. And that's sort of, again, you have to have a more moral society in order to do that. And I think that the more you introduce laws in place of morality, the less moral people become. So instead of weeding out the people who are, they are affecting other people and they are being, let's just say, generally immoral or plain out dumb, just stupid or reckless. Those people do that anyway. Again, there's a great quote by Plato somewhere. I actually have it written down. I got a million quotes. Everything's written in random places somewhere. I gotta find everything. Where the heck is it? If prohibition works, we should just make the drug. Yeah, if it works. That's the whole point, right? If it works. But that's just it. So I gotta find this stupid quote by Plato. Where the hell is it? Oh, okay. So there's a couple of them by Plato that I obviously there's a million I enjoy, but in regards to this topic, here it is. So, good people do not need laws to tell them to act responsibly, while bad people will find a way around the laws. And that's the quote by Plato. So, I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? All of the people who are being moral and making informed, responsible decisions, again, despite what you believe informed, responsible, or moral means, the people that are making their decisions and not affecting anybody else, whether they're being smart or not, are being punished just as badly as those. They're almost being punished in place of these people that are actually hurting and harming others, right? Because we dedicate so many resources to taking care of these laws and regulations that, one, I don't know who the hell voted for. I don't know why they're in place a lot of the time. It's interesting how that works. And two, these laws are only detaining or hurting people. Now, obviously, they're getting rid of bad people too, right? That was the whole point, and there's statistics that show that. But they're also getting rid of and hurting. They're interfering or infringing on the rights of people who aren't doing anything. Simply put, they're just not. They're simply doing decisions that affect nobody else but themselves. And for some reason, we have to have laws in place that dictate that because of the bad people. And I don't think that's right. I think that the less of those laws you have in place, the more of our resources that we have that we can dedicate to things that actually matter. Now, what you want to decide that is, that's a whole nother argument. But I think we can all not we all, but I think it's a reasonably rational thing to say when I say people should be allowed to do whatever they want so long as it doesn't affect anybody else. That seems completely rational to think that to me. And other people call that ridiculous anarchy. It's not possible in today's society. But it's because, again, we use these overarching laws, these overarching groups, these overarching ideas to define, punish, elevate, whatever, everybody, a group, multiple people. And instead of looking at things individually, you know what I mean by that? So, like, it's just so hard to get my thoughts out sometimes, man. Because everything's like intertwined, and certain arguments have to, they have to pull from certain other arguments in order to support themselves, and then I have to explain that argument. So I just feel crazy when I do this because I could go on all day about stuff like this. And I was talking about, how we have too many laws, we have too many regulations, we have these overarching groups that we just start to classify. We start to put people into these groups instead of allowing ourselves to look at individuals and individual scenarios. Because it's very easy to say, well, this is the law and you went against that. So that's the law, and that's simple, black and white, no gray. But when you have those laws, it's almost better to have the gray area so that instead of a governing body deciding what is and what isn't, what's good and what's bad, what's allowed, what's not allowed, instead we can just as people together, it is a governing body because it's a group of people deciding together, let's say, but it's a spur of the moment one. It's not necessary until something happens, right? Man, I lose my train of thought so much. So at any rate, I'm just ranting today. That's really the whole purpose of this video, so I guess I'm doing good in that regard. We just have, I don't know, it bothers me the amount of laws that we have that, though they may be morally grounded initially, maybe not even, but they may have a moral point behind them. I don't know. I'm not very good with vocabulary. They do very immoral things. And in my mind, the immoral thing is taking away people's individuality, right? And it's done that over time, where we're not allowed to be individuals or automatically classified into these groups. And that's because of these laws and regulations. Instead of, again, yeah, so instead of analyzing things individually, case by case, person by person, circumstance by circumstance, we just toss all that out the window oftentimes. Now again, we have our courtrooms and we have our due process, our trials, whatever, but again, these are all based on the laws written. So if we have these laws written that, I'm just going to say, they're probably written by people who don't give a crap about the general public, then what's the point of having a trial based on those laws if the laws themselves are pointless, ridiculous? Maybe not pointless, but they're again, they take away from just individual circumstances and situations where it turns out sometimes things aren't as black and white as our laws and our country wants to make them seem. And I'm okay. I'm perfectly okay with that. I would love for people to have more gray area so that somebody like me can simply have the discussion and say something like, is it okay for somebody to smoke and drive so long as they don't hurt anybody? I think that's a reasonable discussion. It sounds ridiculous, but that it's a logical thing to think, and that just gets tossed out the window by all this black and white lawmaking or group formations. It's so interesting to me. And I hate, this is where my mind goes. This is why I think I'm insane, because I always use words like interesting when I look at, our world around us. And it is interesting to me, but it's also endlessly frustrating. Interesting is just the nice way of putting that. I think the way, everybody thinks this. I'm not going to say everybody, but another thing that the vast majority of America can get behind is, I believe that most people would agree on this, the people making your laws and making decisions for you, no matter how moral they might seem, these decisions and laws aren't made for us, for people. I think that there are some, obviously, that have the public interest in mind, but with the amount of corruption and, lobbying and whatever else that goes on, there's not much written into place anymore that isn't for the benefit of those writing it into place. And that just seems like obvious to me. Why would an immoral person, let me put it like that, why would somebody who is immoral, who has acquired a position of power, want to make decisions for other people? Now, is everybody that is in charge of things immoral? Well, decide that for yourself. But whether they're moral or immoral, my point still stands that nobody should make decisions for me until it affects anybody else. Then all the people that it affects and everybody that has an opinion on it can get together and discuss it, which I guess is what happens in the end. And that's how people argue, well, that's how our laws are made, and that's why these things are in place, because a bunch of people got together and made these decisions. But I would argue back that the people, again, that are getting together and making those decisions, though they are supposed to be representatives and, voices of the people, that's obviously gone. That is not the case. And for anybody that says otherwise, so let's use the example of, I always say this, let's say Donald Trump and Joe Biden, both running for the presidential election 2020. It is baffling, absolutely. I say baffling. Again, it's frustrating. The amount of people, despite what they actually think when they sit down and discuss with people or just allow themselves to try and analyze what they themselves believe, kind of like what I'm trying to do. But the amount of people that... Where was I going with this? Oh, I totally lost my train of thought. That happens so often. Crap. Totally lost my train of thought. Gone. I have too many thoughts at once. But, so what was I talking about? I was talking about lobbying, people making laws not for the people. I was talking about whether you believe laws are moral, or decisions are moral or immoral, if they're affecting other people that it shouldn't affect, why are they in place in the first place? I don't want... It's... trying to organize my thoughts. Trying to remember where I was. I have to say things or write things aloud in order to organize what I actually believe. And oftentimes I say and write things that I don't actually believe. They're just thoughts that pop into my head. There's another thing that, man, has just fallen by the wayside, huh? Allowing people to just think and talk and not letting the things that people say all the time or believe define every single aspect about them. And it's such a common sense thing to say. To me, it feels like common sense. Like, I am somebody who, I enjoy helping other people. It genuinely gives me satisfaction in any way, whether it's, doing work or giving advice that I think is, relevant. I love helping other people in small ways, or just not even helping other people. Let's say making other people temporarily content or happy or better off than they were before. Maybe that's a better way to put that. That's kind of what I want to do. Oftentimes I don't actually do the things I want to do, but man, I'm scrambling. Oh, there goes my coffee. Yep, there goes my coffee. Well, guess I'm cleaning that up. I'll be right back. Always something, isn't it? Always something. Kitty, what did we spill? Oh, it's everywhere. Get the rags. Get the rags. All right. Oh, that was fun. Always spilling stuff everywhere. I'm clumsy as can be. Some things never change. Who even knows what I was thinking out about before? That's something else I need to get better at, is just being able to maintain a line of thought without, you know. Oh, cat hair. Caught it. See that? Like a ninja, bro. But yeah, just being able to maintain my line of thought and, bring it all together. I'm so bad at that sometimes, again, because I just forget where one argument was going. Which happens. You'll have that. At any rate, what else I feel like talking about? What else I feel like ranting on? There's just too many things, really. Too many things to complain about. It's the one thing that we're all good at nowadays, is complaining. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people. I'm definitely one of those people that just complains all the time. I need to start doing more, What do you actually do, though? To change anything or make history? I don't know if anybody's seen this, but there's this whole Rick and Morty bit about, I don't remember what episode it was or what the context of it was, but where there's another Morty made, and the Morty, he's like, in his mid-20s or whatever, and the whole, premise behind him is that he has dreams and hopes of changing the world, and he's still in that age. And then obviously, the ideas, any older or younger, you don't have that mindset anymore. But that's I'm at that age right now, I guess, is where I still have the idea and the dream of changing the world for the better, or making a difference somehow, making people happy on a large scale. And I guess I don't know, I'm starting to get to this point where where it seems pointless. It really does. I don't know. I mean that on a lot of levels, too. Not just the whole change the world and make history or make individuals happy. It all, I'm getting to this weird stage, and I never was like this before, and I don't want to be like this, but it's where my mind has arrived at anyway, despite what I know, or not even what I know, I guess what I feel to be correct. I'm just arriving at this point where, even though I know it's wrong to not care, I'm starting to not care about literally anything. You know, it's like we have all these, let's go back to the laws and regulations. We have all of these rules in place to keep us civilized and, working together in harmony or whatever. But some of the rules, as I said, I don't even want to go back to the rules thing and the regulations or laws and stuff. I just speak and I don't understand enough. That's my problem. So back to what I was saying. I'm just at this point that I don't know if I'm important enough to change anything, or if there is a purpose to changing anything, because history, as we know, repeats itself, and it has time and time and time and time and time again in some of the most atrocious ways, and obviously people who were much greater than myself, much more learned, intelligent, much more stable emotionally, let's say. All those people, though they might have done something at the time, did not change anything in the grand scheme of things, you know? You have all these, and again, everybody's got opinions on what's right and wrong, but for the sake of argument, let's just, I'm going to use these names. People like Mother Teresa, or people like Gandhi. And, everybody's got their opinions about Gandhi, I know. But, people like Nelson Mandela, or whatever. People that I probably know not as much about as I should, because none of that was ever taught to me. Why would it be? It's not important for my Delta Epsilon lifestyle, I guess. But I thought this rant thing was going to be a good idea. I thought it was going to be a way to, sort of get me to calm down a little, but it's not. I'm literally talking to myself. But all of those people, though they made, again, maybe small differences at the time, one, whether people think that those differences are good or bad is entirely a matter of perspective. Because there's people that don't think Gandhi was a great guy. And maybe he wasn't. Again, there's probably things about everybody that's not so great. It's amazing how that works. It's almost as if the world isn't black and white. I don't know. They all tried to change things. They're all much, much greater people than myself. And yet history has just, again, repeated itself or become even worse. I guess the present has become even worse, but history, the past has, let's say, maybe not exponentially, but progressively gotten more and more atrocious even. You just wonder what you should do to change anything at any point in time. If there's anything you can do. Or if you even should. Because again, I have the way I think, and I believe I'm a moral human being that cares about others and is doing things that I believe are helpful or right or good. I don't know the way to put that, but what if I'm wrong? You know what I mean? What if it's better that a bunch of elitist corporations lobby to make all of your decisions and decide what is morally correct, and everybody gets to live in harmony and peace despite a few freedoms being taken away? Maybe that's right. Maybe I'm wrong, you know? Because you always have to entertain that possibility. Otherwise, you can't actually talk with anybody or think about anything. Gotta entertain the possibility that you could be wrong. Lack of people that do that is amazing. But again, I have all these strong opinions on how I think things should run. But they could all just be wrong. So that's kind of how I arrive at the conclusion that despite what is or isn't right or wrong, or let me put it like this, nobody actually knows, let's say, what the ultimate good is, what things are actually good and what things are actually bad. And this is sort of a existentialist philosophical thought, but the idea that, like, so let's put it in the sense of what would you call, like, economic systems things, so like capitalism. People consider capitalism to be either good or bad, but capitalism isn't anything. It just is what it is. You know what I mean? Whether it is good or bad, that's entirely perspective. So that's how circling back around to where I was, the only perspective that I guess works, or that makes sense to me in the end, is the perspective that everybody should have their own perspectives on everything, and that you should not allow other people's perspectives to interfere with your day to day, with your life. You should allow them maybe to influence you a little bit. You should listen to them, allow yourself to have an open mind, but it's just so interesting. That's the only conclusion you can arrive at, I guess, is when, because nobody actually knows what is right or wrong, good or bad, best, worse. Because nobody actually knows the answer to that, the only answer is that everybody should come up with their own answer. Right? And not allow that to be decided for you by anybody else in any circumstance. Now, that's where it gets weird for me. This is where my mind goes bonkers. Is because there's certain things that I'm just going to say I feel, I believe, and there's not reason behind it. You know what I mean? So, like, an example of that, let's go to what you said, Code, talking about murder. That's one of those things. So, like, in my mind, killing somebody else that has not affected you or done anything to you in any sort of way, it doesn't seem like a good thing. That seems like a morally wrong thing to do. But why is that? Why do I feel that way? You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of a dumb question because it's like almost like an obvious thing. Don't kill people. But in reality, it's not a dumb question. Or it's not a dumb idea, a dumb thought, I guess. Because I believe that with all of my being. You know, there's certain, I believe that you should always try and help people when you can. If you're in a position to do so, you should always, you know, stay out of other people's business if they don't want you in your business. That's something that, you know, it just morally makes sense to me. But there's no reason that I think those things. There's no logical reason to come to those conclusions, I guess. Aside from the fact that I wouldn't want people interfering with me and stuff like that. But like, why would that be such a bad thing, I guess? I don't know, you know. It's such a weird thing. Because, like, what if somebody kills somebody in cold blood just for, you know, I don't even know where I'm going with this, really. Again, it's, how do I want to put this? Where am I going with this? At the end of the day, I'm just going to circle back to my original statement of nobody knows what's right or wrong, despite what you feel so deeply that it cannot be altered or changed. Nobody actually knows what's right or wrong, because it turns out that multiple different people have multiple different conclusions about what is right or wrong. And for anybody else to decide that, if it's not, you know, for anybody else to decide that when your decision affects others and their decisions have nothing to do with you, it just seems wrong to me. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But to allow other people, based on their perspective of good and evil, right and wrong, to make a decision for anybody else, it just seems wrong to me. But again, this is where my mind goes insane, because is it wrong? You know what I mean? Just a crisis of existentialism and hypocrisy in my own mind. It's wild how it works. It's like I always have like these rational, logical conclusions I come to that make sense, and then my mind goes, but you know, because what if you thought about it like this instead? What if you changed your perspective? What if you thought about it from the other side? What if you had to justify the opposite of what you believed? Or what if nothing you believe means anything and this is all pointless to even think about? It's just that's where my mind goes constantly. I don't know.